Julie Brill, thank you so much for joining us in studio today to talk about your new book, Hidden in Plain Sight.
Thank you, Natalie, for having me.
And your new book is about the work camps in former Yugoslavia and your grandfather and your father's story of their experience in the Holocaust. Can you tell us about maybe how the book starts and how you were inspired to write it?
Yeah, I would love to. So the start of the book is really like my early childhood growing up in suburban Boston and hearing these stories from my father of his early childhood in Belgrade, Yugoslavia. He was born in 1938. So he had these very young stories, young child stories of what had happened during the war to him and his family in the Jewish neighborhood in Belgrade. And I was always listening hard and asking questions, and it always felt like really important. But I couldn't plug it into the other parts of the history of the Holocaust that I was learning. I mean, I learned about Germany and I learned about Poland and Anne Frank in Holland, and it didn't fit. And so I somehow didn't really understand what the historical context was. And then in 2017, empty nest, my kids are grown, I really started researching, and there was new information. We could pull family documents. I could learn what had happened to my family, like the story of my grandfather that my grandmother never knew. And my father was still able to answer questions and give new information. And I started just like writing this book, and we went to Belgrade 3 different times, my father and my daughters, and met family we hadn't known existed and got more pictures and more information. At one point we were standing outside on the street where the hotel was, and my father looked up and had a new memory, that what had happened when he was a kid. So place can really trigger memory.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and bringing him back to that moment must have triggered so many memories.
I mean, it really was his hometown, and I didn't realize until we were there,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And could you tell me, what does he remember from that time?
Yeah, so his earliest memory is the German bombing. Germany hadn't declared war on Yugoslavia, but they had violated a pact, and so Hitler was angry, and there was this surprise bombing for 3 days, particularly targeting the Jewish neighborhood of Dorchel where my family lived, and that's what my father remembers. So the sound of the bombs, running in the streets to the shelter. They were in the shelter for a couple of days. He remembers that. And then he remembers coming home, and something made my grandmother, as they were leaving, she put a plate full of cookies on the wardrobe. And when they came back, the plate had shattered in 2. And that fascinated my father. Like, it didn't break into a million pieces, just 2 pieces. And so that's like this very young child's memory of, what had happened. It was about all I think that he could absorb.
Right.
Yeah, the destruction of this plate.
And there's symbolism right there, right?
Yeah, very much.
So your inspiration from writing the book was about your father's stories. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose that title?
Yes, so my father obviously survived the war, along with his younger sister who was born during the occupation. And I could never understand why. And we had this picture, we had 4 pictures, but the one I was most fascinated with is the one that's on the cover. So it's my father and my aunt. She's about 1.5 years and he's about 6. And they're standing on the street. And they're not hiding, but they are hiding. And the more I learned, the more fantastic it is that picture exists. First of all, that it survived the war and we have it. Second of all, it was illegal to take pictures in Germany. It's not like now where everyone had a cell phone. You couldn't own a camera. You couldn't take pictures on the street. Somehow my grandmother had this picture taken. Probably she wanted to share it later with my grandfather. But we think that picture is from 1943. And in the spring of 1942, Belgrade was one of the first cities to be declared Judenfrei, which is free of Jews. So there weren't supposed to be any Jews, and here are these 2 little Jewish children. So that's really what kind of motivated me to write the story and then share it.
Right.
How am I here? How did he survive? How is any of this possible?
All of that effort needs to be worth something, right? It needs to have a result at the end, and that's this incredible book, this story that you've documented.
Thank you. Yeah.
Why, this coming Monday is actually, January 27th is Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yes.
Internationally. So why is it important to continue to talk about these atrocities and about these stories that aren't from, Germany or Poland. They're from other countries that we don't talk about as much. Why is that important?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think a lot about why do we talk about the Holocaust? There's so many atrocities that are happening right now. I think if we don't understand our history, we just are in a loop. Not that genocides haven't happened since the Holocaust. They have and are happening, but that we're just doomed if we don't understand how we got there before. Part of what motivated me to write this story, my family story, is you need survivors to tell the story. The Holocaust Remembrance Day is the anniversary. It's the 80th anniversary this year of the liberation of Auschwitz. People know Auschwitz. They know it because there were thousands of survivors who could tell the story. In Eastern Europe, there were whole villages where no one survived, and so the names of the murdered victims are unknown, the stories are unknown, and I wanted to tell that story. People don't know, but more Jews were murdered outside the camps than in them. All the stories are important, but this story is a lesser-known story.
Absolutely, and it's not just the story of your family, it's the story of millions of families
Yes.
who will never be able to express that.
Yes, I think about that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's 2025, like you said, 80 years after Auschwitz, the Auschwitz camps were freed. What do you hope readers take away from Hidden in Plain Sight, and how can we take these stories and learn from them?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a story on different levels. On one level, it's the story of me finding out what happened in my family. So I really feel like it's a story for anybody who wants to find out what's happened in their family, or has, or knows about family secrets, or wants to uncover them. It's a little bit of a how-to, in terms of finding documents and talking to older family members and getting those stories. So that's the general. And then the specific is there's no family exactly like my family. There's no story exactly like this, and I wanted to share it. My family, in Yugoslavia, they were ordinary people, so it's not to talk about them because they were famous or unusual. It's because they were very ordinary, and that's, I think, what makes the story a story.
Absolutely. And can you tell our viewers where they can learn more about you and about the book?
Yes, so I have a website. It's just my name, juliebrill.com. And there's lots of information about the book, and it's available for pre-order now, so you can order it through the site.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for coming in and talking about this.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for having me. I really appreciate it.